Wow, so the opening of this episode completely shocked me. This is the first time we've seen an actual shot from the timeline in Breaking Bad. We've seen post Breaking Bad, and obviously the whole show was before Breaking Bad, but we've never seen a moment that's actually taking place inside of the Breaking Bad timeline. This is all right before Saul leaves for Nebraska for good. And what's great about opening with this scene is it's showing you Saul being teared down here, and the opposite of what currently that's going on in Better Call Saul is us seeing him getting built up and created. So he's shredding all the files, he's getting all the hidden money out of there, coming from the walls and the ceiling. And at one point he takes a box out that he doesn't open that's behind the Constitution wall. Does anyone remember if they actually alluded to this in Breaking Bad? What is in this box, or is this something they're setting up? If it's not something they set up, do you have any theories? What I love here is he offers the secretary, Francesca, just a wad of cash out of all this money first. And then he was even resistant to give her 2 wads. He was like, fine. Just showing you the man he becomes as Saul. And I love he offers her a hug, and she just is not having it. Really funny stuff here. And he says a line to Francesca, when the cops come, tell him Jimmy sent you. So it's a nice toss to the first man he left behind in Jimmy. And now in this moment, he's leaving behind Saul, getting ready for his third identity, which we see in the Cinnabon. This has just been brilliant storytelling of this man's arc as a character through 2 separate shows in Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad. I feel like are trying to set a record here in the most impressive transition of a character arc between 2 separate shows completely. It really is phenomenal how well thought out this is and put together. And that's what was so impressive about this open to me, that they were able to put something like this in that timeline of Breaking Bad and make it work for what we're watching in Better Call Saul currently. So Saul at the end there makes a call to get away and set up his shot in Nebraska, which we saw in Breaking Bad, the last we ever see of him in that show. And anything Breaking Bad related gets my blood flowing. It's super exciting, and they aren't overdoing it in Saul, which is good. So they don't ruin the magic of that feeling. They kind of just throw it in opens or little hints to it, but they're not overdoing it, so I like that. So back to Better Call Saul timeline. Jimmy's at the CC Mobile, still bored out of his mind, but then a truck passes, and I love Jimmy uses the force to bring him in, going like this, and he completely swindles this man. He brilliantly makes it look like everyone's buying these burner phones, like a bunch are on hold and that they have a short supply. But this average Joe that walks in, who buys all these phones from Jimmy, he connects it to, oh, am I worried about the IRS calling me from seeing the sign outside? So he's not the type of audience Jimmy's trying to attract here. Because to sell to a guy like this, even though he did it brilliantly and successfully did it, it was still a lot of work on Jimmy's end. And it still only brought in 1 customer like that. So what's the point of this scene? This scene shows what Jimmy painted outside the store isn't the most enticing thing to average Joes driving by in the shopping center, and criminals are too smart to just walk in from a sign like that. And that it's just too much work to sell to a guy like that, too much effort. So that's a good setup to what happens later on, which we'll get to. So then we get a crazy scene here with Mike picking up a foreign engineering geologist in Denver. I love the phone call he makes to him where Mike's like, do you need to relieve yourself before we have to go? And talk about going to extremes to cover something up. On Gus's end, they're picking this guy all the way up in Denver, putting his head in a hoodie to make sure he has no idea possibly where he is all the way out in Albuquerque. And there was some beautiful cinematography here. Just seeing also all the Denver mountains here. It was nice to see some scenery outside of New Mexico. On the show, it actually brought some scale to this and Gus's operation. And then even the shots too, with Mike and this engineer sitting in the back of the van. And the lighting was impressive, where it was able to seamlessly show the transition from how long this trip was, where the lighting just showed from it going to day to night like that from inside a van. So they did that really well. And then on top of that, I love the point of view shots they had from being in this guy's shoes. Imagine first meeting a guy like Mike just through voice, not seeing him at first and not knowing where the hell you are. That is terrifying. So this scene was super effective on all cases here. And then amazingly, we end up at the laundromat that we know Gus had his super lab in Breaking Bad. So already, this is a huge Breaking Bad-esque episode and probably the most important one to have prior knowledge of Breaking Bad in. Now, just to catch everyone up, this super lab we learned in Breaking Bad was put together, at least the layout, by Gale, who we saw last episode, and it was Gus's big move to move away from Mexican drug cartels. And they would receive chemical deliveries here every week, filtered with the state-of-the-art filtration system. The facility was capable of producing hundreds of pounds of meth a week, and we know this cost him $8 million to actually make. And that Gus says in Breaking Bad that he requires a minimum of 200 pounds of meth a week to make the lab profitable. So it's interesting they're going down this route and showing us how this all came about. So the important thing to realize here is this first engineer that comes in is very cocky, he's very businessy, salesman-like, and he's his own boss. Remember, this guy didn't take a drink from Mike. He kept saying he was fine when Mike was asking him if he felt like he was sick, and it's completely in contrast to the engineer we're going to see later. So remember that, because that's very important. So after the engineer gives his proposal and the info to Mike, Mike gets a call immediately on his cell, and it's definitely Gus calling him. And then he says to the engineer, "Thanks for your time." So Gus didn't like him, and Mike wasn't feeling him either. And of course, Gus is listening to this whole conversation. So Gus definitely didn't like this guy's big ego, his salesman vibe, and he probably was a little suspicious of him too, because he gave a very generic story of how he built an escape way for a runaway for El Paso. So it just did not fit the Gus vibe at all. So then we cut to Kim now at the courthouse, and what's so important here is how much Kim loves that color blue, which has been obvious since the show started. And she even gives her defendant a blue tie. Now remember, blue symbolizes loyalty, honor, trust, stability. These are all things associated with Kim. So again, she's in this full blue suit, giving this blue tie, trying to get this guy, the defendant, to see the right here. So then we see that jerk lawyer confronts Kim here and is against him in this case from earlier in Better Call Saul. And he's shocked Kim is pleading not guilty for this kid. And Kim calls him out for his BS right away, saying she has proof the officers took advantage of this kid and that the lawyer knew about it. And she basically threatens him, like, "You don't want me to bring this up with the judge." So Kim is coming in hot here, and she's become a hell of a lawyer. And we get this great shot from behind Kim and this other lawyer in the courtroom, and how she's sitting on the right, he's sitting on the left, which is great symmetry for a shot when Kim helps that girl out outside, which we'll get to later as well. And that other lawyer is a great line. He's like, "You can't play chicken with me. I invented chicken." And she's just like, wow. And then she gets him to drop the time this kid's going to serve tremendously. They settle the case right there before the judge even does anything. She gets it all the way down to 4 months probation. So this scene now, when they get out of the courtroom, shows that Kim genuinely cares about her clientele. Wants this kid to turn his life around, not rot in a jail cell. She's caring more about this kid than this huge bank she actually works for. And it's great, she's giving this kid life advice when he's being kind of snippy about the whole thing, complaining he even got probation after she got all that stuff off for him. And she's like, "Go to any job you can get, stay clean, because if you don't, you will go to jail, and I'm not helping you then." She's really stern here, putting her foot down. So this is really impressive Kim at her job right now. But you see she's putting her best eggs now into these cases that aren't so important on the grand scale of things, compared to the really important gigs she's flustered by and ignoring at the moment. So then we get a scene with Jimmy and Kim, and they're about to watch a movie at their house. And Kim says she has Mesa Verde work to do, so she can't actually watch the movie. And we get some really good acting by Bob Odenkirk here, pondering whether to stay with Kim at that moment. But knowing now that she's not going to watch the movie, he's contemplating, do I leave and go do what I really want to do? And just, it's really shot well how, from his perspective, we see Kim just sitting there doing her work, and he's just thinking about it because he loves Kim, but he's hooked to this other life. He knows he shouldn't go, but he's gonna go, of course. And he tells her he's going to his job, and she's like, at 9 p.m. at night? And this is just Jimmy lying through his teeth to Kim, like always. So then Jimmy goes to CC Mobile at night, place is closed, and he buys a bunch of burner phones from his own money. And he makes it look like regular transactions in the store with the receipts and the type of bills he puts in. And he's obviously ready to make a profit off of these things and probably sell them higher value, but to the right customers. So this whole sequence is awesome. It really shows you amazingly how different the game is in the streets, and seeing this guy transition to that vibe and what he's already learning step by step that we're learning with him. So Jimmy tries his first sale to 3 kids on the side of the road, and they think he's a narc, and he says, "Would a narc drive this piece of crap?" Great line. But they're not even buying it, and he knows that, and he can't even talk his way through it. And he realizes this style of clothes he's wearing, the way he's coming on, isn't gonna work. So what does Jimmy do? He goes to that nail salon that was used so much earlier in Better Call Saul to get his street wardrobe ready, and he puts on a jumpsuit and of course a chain. So freaking funny to see him walking around in that. And this just shows you, again, one of Jimmy's biggest skills is he's like a chameleon. He can adapt to any customer. He can sell to anything. You just gotta let him figure it out, and he can do it. So he goes to the doghouse with the song Street Life by Randy Crawford playing, which if you look up the lyrics for that song, it's literally the perfect song to be playing in the background for Jimmy at this moment. Just talking about the street life's the only place I can go, only place I know. And it's perfectly synced with each shot. So props again, this creative team on this show. It's incredibly thought out work. So he's playing the part here. It's working. He's selling these burner phones like crazy to these street thugs, and he's even imitating some people he's selling to. Talking about this chameleon effect where one kid's got his foot against the wall and he stands next to him just like him. He's super personable. So he made a killing there. Big success. He's still got a couple burner phones left. And then, of course, when he's about to leave, a huge biker gang pulls up. And what's brilliant about this scene is how they use the music, because the music cuts and then it immediately jumps to super suspenseful music. So already the happiness, tone, and vibe he was feeling of the street life is already getting darker as you go. And he knows he did well already and should probably go back to Kim and go home. But he can't. And he turns around, and this really showed that addictive side of him. Completely hooked to this life. And I was so nervous for him in this scene that these bikers were going to beat him up and something bad was going to happen to him. But he pulls it off because he's this incredible salesman. And it's got to be a huge stroke to his ego at that point when he's eating the food right after and he's waving goodbye to them. But the ironic thing is it ends up being the kids who come up and beat the crap out of him and want his money. And it shows the bad side of the streets. This is going to happen, and that he's not young slipping Jimmy anymore. Jimmy was good on the road, but Saul is meant to be in an office. He works from his place. Leave dealing with the street gangs face to face out in the open for Walter White. This was just a phenomenal scene all around for character growth from Jimmy to Saul. And this really is going to progress this now into Saul Goodman, because a lot of people are complaining how long it's been taking. This was a huge send-off to me. And it transitions to this mesmerizing shot of Kim laying in bed and turning, and there's no Jimmy there. To me, this was showing it like Jimmy's vanishing from her. He's going away. And I can officially say, 5 episodes in, this season, more than any other season, Jimmy feels more like Saul than Jimmy. He's been nonstop lying this whole season, and he's been high energy and very, very motivated to become the best lawyer like we see at the end of the episode. And even Kim, she's like, did you call the police? And he's just like, what's the point? Don't feel like looking at mugshots all the time. He can talk his way out of anything. He goes, back in the day, they would know not to roll me, but those days are over. And he's like, yeah. Which we know is BS. And Kim's already getting that vibe, but Jimmy always covers his butt and wants to make face to Kim, so he says, hey, maybe I'll call that shrink tomorrow. Just like he did where he's like, yeah, I'm going to get that job at CC Mobile. So, again, he's doing that part for Kim. And there's a part of him that did want to call that shrink. But is he really going to do that? Of course not. And part of it also is him making sure Kim doesn't get too suspicious of what he's really up to. Jimmy takes out the paint from outside of the store. Clearly knows his strategy isn't as effective and that he can't be that obvious either. Criminals are smarter than that to just walk in to a store with that sign. That's just not how you're going to bring him in. So then we get Kim again going above and beyond for these lower cases. He tells the girl Denise she needs to come out now and that she's an hour late for court. And I love this shot that I was referring to before. She's sitting outside talking to Denise, giving her hope, what she has to do, counseling her, and she's on the right side, just like in the courtroom. Like, again, Kim is always for the just, what is right and what is good. And it's like showing you she's leading Denise there. And what's great to just line it all up is when Denise comes out and changes into clothes after Kim's like, change into good clothes. Of course, she's wearing a blue shirt. It's like Kim converted her now. She sees the light. So the color scheme here and what it's telling you is very important and it works great in the show. So she's killing this game, but because of this and putting her full attention to this, Mesa Verdi's calling now, and they got an issue with paperwork that needs immediate attention, and her boss Paige is like, I need you now. And Kim's like, sorry, I can't, and then eventually hangs up on her, which is a big no-no, especially for your main client. So when Kim goes and ends up seeing Paige in Mesa Verde, Paige explains she's not even that mad about the mistake she made. She's mad about not getting the full attention and focus from her. And she's like, when we need you, we need you. We're not a client you hang up on. And Kim's like, I'm really sorry, Paige. I'll never let it happen again. But this is not said with enthusiasm. I mean, it says it all over Kim's face. He's pretty over this bank thing. And the cracks are starting to show. So now, back to Mike's story. He picks up now a German engineer. And this guy, like I said, completely different than the other guy. He's gonna throw up in the car. He takes the water from Mike. He's wimpy, he's a pushover, but he's super detailed in his story, which is different now in his explanation of how they're going to do this. The other guy took like 2 scans and was like, we're good to go. This guy gave a full layout of what really was going on. He's trustworthy. And an interesting line he says to Mike is, am I going to get schematics of the utilities? And Mike's like, you're going to get those. I'm sure that's Gail who's getting that for him. So it's going to be interesting how they come about this Gail thing with the super lab, because now it makes complete sense why they introduced us to Gail in Better Call Saul last episode. So we're definitely going to see more of him this season. And then Gus comes out, just like that. Meaning he's got the okay. Gus likes him. He was listening again the whole time. So again, the past 2 episodes of the show, everything's really been clicking. It is a super slow burn, but if you're taking in for the character development and how every shot makes sense with the other and perfectly is flowing this season compared to other seasons, it's super impressive. So now we see Jimmy at the courtroom run into Howard Hamlin in the bathroom. Someone I thought we'd only see maybe a scene of him left, but we quickly got back to him, which I like because he is such a good character. But he's a completely broken man. His tie is disheveled. His hair is not gelled for the first time ever. He's on a small case, he says, not even a big case. And it's sad, honestly. Like, I feel for Howard Hamlin. He could be a jerk sometimes, but he doesn't deserve all this guilt he has. Some of this has to go to Jimmy. But Jimmy's putting it all on him. And Howard's like, you ever have insomnia? Wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. And it's such a funny thing to contrast that to Jimmy because he's the type of guy who would. And he's seeing it happen now to Hamlin, a guy he does not like. And then, the craziest line maybe Jimmy's said in a long time. Sorry, I gotta ask, what's eating you? I was shocked at this line. And that is a brutal thing to say to Howard after he already said to him it's his cross to bear. Jimmy just wants to hear it. He's loving it. He wants to hear Hamlin admit everything he's wrong about and just see him suffer. And Hamlin's like, I think I've shared enough. Jimmy offers Hamlin a number for a shrink, which is the number Kim gave him. And Howard's like, thanks, I'm already seeing someone twice a week. And Jimmy's like, really? So he's just rubbing it all into how much of a mess Howard is right to his face. And trying to like show how better off he is in better state of mind. So this is pretty cruel on Jimmy's part and shows how he likes to see certain people really, really suffer emotionally. And then him having the shrink's number from Kim shows, yeah, he had it in his pocket. He was considering calling it. But he uses it for a bad reason now, to screw with Howard, and then goes to the toilets, looking at it, thinking about it, and he rips it up. So he's had a lot of choices to stay as the Jimmy Kim knows and loves, and he's constantly toying with staying, but always jumps to the Saul-like choice. And we get this great last scene where Jimmy's telling the DEA employee about his job at CC Mobile, and the guy's like, you work with any criminals? And Jimmy's like, no. But now he is. And he's like, do you have any idea what you're going to do when your PPD time is over? And he's like, everything will be better. I'm going to be a damn good lawyer. And people are going to know about it. And the employee's like, okay, I get it. So lawyer. And Jimmy's like, yeah, lawyer. So this is like, all of this is coming out in this scene, that inner monologue of Jimmy and that anger he has and wanting to prove Chuck wrong even in his death of how good of a lawyer he is just comes out here. It's like he snaps. And it shows he is as hungry as ever, proving for himself to himself what he really is. This is such a great scene because it's such an earned payoff to get to this point with all the backstory they gave us with Chuck and Jimmy and their relationship, how much conflict they had, for all the reasons why he'd become Saul Goodman, even when Chuck's dead. It's still a motivation his head is like Hades had towards Chuck at the end here, and all the disbelief against him. And he's so obsessed and addicted to proving this to himself and to others, where he's still ignoring things that are probably still arguably more valuable, like him. But this is his drive. This is his passion. And it relates a lot to Walter White for how he would say to Skylar in the finale, I did it for me. This is the same conflict Jimmy's having with becoming Saul Goodman. He's doing it for him. This episode was bomb to me. Incredible detail to everything. The writing was beautifully flowing. Everything connected. The past two episodes, everything is just connected like we've never seen this show before. And what I loved about the theme in this episode was there was this beautiful feeling I got watching it that Kim and Jimmy were both going backwards in a way because they were going to their old lives. He was going back to slipping Jimmy type moves, and Kim was going back to doing small cases that she has more passion about. And they were finding joy in going back to their old way, which I thought was interesting. Because I think we've all had that moment in life where you go back to an old job that you thought you didn't need or were over, and you find you did need it and you do like it, and that there is something you didn't appreciate about it, seeing the other side, and that the grass isn't always greener, you've learned. So I thought that really worked here. And the great theme here of, does anyone really ever change? We've seen Kimmy and Jimmy change from their beginning star of the show to something else, and now going back to their old ways, and Jimmy now going to a completely new direction as well. It's like an amped up version of Slippin' Jimmy is Saul. So in a sense, they're both just going back to square one. Kim's always going to be this honorable, loyal person for just. And Jimmy's always going to be part of that wheeling and dealing in criminal life. It's just who they are. It's their DNA. And I love this Breaking Bad timeline opening sequence here. If there's anything to hook people in that watch Breaking Bad that didn't start watching Saul. This is it. Because now you're telling them there's something that's part of that time in Breaking Bad. People are going to flip out. And we saw the beginning of the Super Lab, which was really cool in an effective way. It's not just to fill in time like it might come off. It's showing you how Gus thinks now, strategically. And all the stuff him and Mike do together. And how they create this empire we're about to see. So this is a 9.5 for me. Solid episode. It is a super, super slow burn, though, so you have to appreciate this type of storytelling to really enjoy this season, I feel like. And I really suggest for people to watch each episode twice. I always like it better the second viewing. So much stuff they throw at you, and you miss it the first time. Please comment below what you thought of this episode. If you agree with me, disagree with me, I'd love to hear it. Please subscribe. My review for each Better Call Saul episode gets posted right after each episode airs, so you don't want to miss one. And please follow me at SteveVarley1 on Twitter and Instagram for more of me, and I'll see you next time.